The moment Captain Elias stepped into the throne hall of Zirin Prime, he felt the weight of 2 galaxies pressing on his shoulders. The hall stretched endlessly, gleaming with silver and sapphire light. Crystal columns rose like frozen rivers, and soft waves of luminescence pulsed through the air. It was more alive than any building he'd ever seen, as if the palace itself was breathing. At the far end, on a dais of liquid glass, sat her, Queen Arleia, ruler of the Zirin Empire, the alien monarch who ended humanity's greatest war. She was not what Elias had imagined. No monster, no conqueror cloaked in fire. Instead, she looked impossibly calm, serene, radiant. Her skin shimmered faintly with light, and her long silver hair drifted behind her as though moved by an invisible breeze. But her eyes, those violet eyes, held something ancient and endless. Elias knelt, armor cracked and dusty. Captain Elias Ward, 3rd Human Fleet. His voice was steady, though his heart pounded like a drum. Arleia's gaze lingered on him. You are the one who refused to surrender the Varelian colony until your people escaped. I was only doing my duty, Your Majesty, Elias answered. Duty, she repeated softly, as if testing the word. Your kind speaks of duty as if it were a song you never tire of singing. Her tone wasn't mocking. It was curious, too curious. She rose from her throne, her gown rippling like starlit water. The guards shifted but dared not move. Rise, Captain, she said. You are not my captive. Elias hesitated. Then what am I? Her lips curved faintly. A mystery. One I intend to understand. The word sent a ripple through the room. The Zirin ministers exchanged sharp looks. No human had ever been called a mystery before the Queen. To the Zirins, humans were fragile creatures, erratic, emotional, barely surviving their own wars. Yet here before their queen, a human stood unshackled. That night, Elias was given quarters overlooking the capital, a city of light that floated among the clouds. Rivers of silver energy wound through its skyline like living threads. He watched from the balcony, unable to rest. He had lost his crew, his fleet, his world. Why would an alien ruler care to understand him? The answer came at dawn. The doors opened without warning. Arleia entered alone, wearing no crown, no guards. Only soft robes that glowed faintly with the sunrise. Elias straightened. Your Majesty, do you dream, Captain? She asked suddenly. He blinked. Dream? When your mind sleeps. Do you see visions? He nodded slowly. Yes, we dream of things we wish for. And things we fear. Her expression softened, almost wistful. We Zirins do not dream. Our minds rest in silence. That sounds peaceful. Empty, she corrected. Silence followed. Then, almost hesitantly, she added, Tell me, what do you humans dream of when you no longer have hope? Elias looked at her, unsure if she wanted truth or comfort. He gave her the first. We dream anyway, because that's the only way we remember who we are. Something in her face changed, like a storm passing across still water. She looked away. Perhaps that is what I've forgotten. He watched her walk toward the balcony, her figure framed by the rising light. She stood there for a long moment, gazing at the stars fading behind the dawn. Then she said quietly, The universe fears your kind, Captain, because you keep dreaming, even after losing everything. Elias didn't know why, but in that instant he no longer saw her as the enemy who conquered Earth's sky. He saw a lonely soul, a queen trapped by victory. And in her eyes, for a fleeting heartbeat, he thought he saw something human. The next morning, Elias found the queen waiting for him again, this time in the Garden of Spheres. It was unlike any garden on Earth. Transparent orbs floated mid-air, filled with liquid light and whispering sound. Beneath them grew silver vines that shimmered when touched. And there, among all the alien beauty, Queen Arleia stood barefoot in the dew. When she turned toward him, he noticed something different. Her royal calm was gone, replaced by quiet wonder. You walk softly, she said, her voice low. He smiled faintly. Years in the army teach you that. Footsteps can betray more than words. Arleia tilted her head, studying him. Humans always speak as if every word carries a story. Is it exhaustion? Or longing? Maybe both. The queen's lips curved slightly, not a smile, but something close. She gestured to a hovering orb beside her. Inside it swirled an image, his home planet, Earth, shown from orbit. The sight hit him like a blade. Oceans of blue, clouds drifting peacefully. The world he might never see again. You miss it, she said softly. Elias nodded. Every breath, for a long moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered, when Ziran children are young, they are taught to release memory, to never cling to what was. It keeps us efficient, focused, but also, she paused as if confessing to the air, it leaves us hollow. Her gaze shifted to him again, sharp yet fragile. You humans hold your pain like fire, even when it burns you. Why? Elias thought for a long time. Because without it, we forget what mattered. Pain reminds us we cared. The words lingered between them like a slow echo. Arleia looked at the orb again. Your pain gives you strength. Mine only reminds me of what I destroyed. There it was, and the truth behind her silence. For years she had been the face of victory, the symbol of a flawless empire. Yet now Elias saw the fracture in her heart. She had won every battle, but lost herself in the triumph. He took a careful step forward. Your Majesty, may I ask something? She turned toward him, eyes luminous in the morning light. Ask. When your people invaded us, when you ended the war, and what did it cost you? The Queen's hand trembled slightly, the first unsteady motion he had ever seen from her. Everything, she said at last. I thought ending your resistance would bring peace to the stars. Instead, the silence that followed was louder than war. She looked at him as if the admission itself had wounded her. Do you understand what it means to rule over billions who no longer know how to feel? Elias met her gaze. Maybe that's why you needed to understand humans. Her eyes softened. Perhaps, she murmured. You live by emotion. We live by control. But lately, she hesitated, searching for words. I wonder if control is a slower kind of death. They walked among the spheres in silence. The floating orbs mirrored them, two figures, human and alien, reflected in rippling light. As they paused by a fountain that sang with crystal notes, Elias noticed how the sunlight touched her face, revealing exhaustion beneath her perfection. He said quietly, You don't have to understand us, Your Majesty. Maybe you just need to remember what it feels like to be alive. Arleia turned to him. For a heartbeat, she seemed unsure whether to answer as a ruler or a woman. Then she whispered, alive. Yes, that word still sounds beautiful. And before she left, she said something that haunted him for nights afterward. Captain Elias, if your people could teach me how to dream, would you? He could only answer with truth. Yes, Your Majesty. I would. The Queen smiled faintly, almost shyly, as if the universe itself had forgotten such warmth. Then perhaps, Captain, I shall learn. The palace of Ziran Prime had never known silence quite like that night. The Queen's chambers, vast and filled with the hum of living crystal, stood in perfect stillness. Only one sound broke through the air, a human heartbeat. Elias sat by the window, watching the alien sky unfold above him. The stars here pulsed faintly as if alive, each one beating with slow rhythm. He thought of Earth, of nights filled with distant city lights and the sound of rain. How strange that an alien world could feel lonelier than a battlefield. He didn't hear the door open. When he turned, Arleia stood there barefoot again, wearing no royal insignia, just a soft silver robe that shimmered like morning mist. Her hair flowed freely down her back, catching the faint glow of the room's walls. You're awake? She said quietly. He nodded. Couldn't sleep. Her eyes traced the stars outside the window. Nor could I. There was something fragile in her tone. Not weakness or fragility, the kind that comes from holding too much power for too long. Captain, she began softly, when you dream, can you choose what to see? He shook his head. No, dreams choose us. Arleia tilted her head, thinking deeply. Then how does one begin? He smiled faintly. You close your eyes. You stop being queen for a moment. You let go. Let go, she whispered, as though it were a foreign phrase, that we were never taught. Elias rose and stepped closer. The air between them shimmered faintly, a hum of tension, curiosity, and something else neither of them dared name. He gestured toward the balcony. Come, you should see how humans fall asleep. The Queen followed him outside. The alien moonlight bathed her face in silver hues, softening the sharpness of her royal poise. For the first time she looked almost mortal. Elias sat on the stone ledge and looked at the sky. We used to make wishes when we saw a falling star, he said. It's a silly old thing, but it gave us hope. Her eyes followed his gaze. And did your wishes come true? Sometimes, he said with a small smile. Mostly it just reminded us that hope still existed. For a long while they sat in silence, human and queen beneath the endless stars. Then Arleia closed her eyes. "Like this?" she asked softly. "Yes," Elias said. "Now, imagine something you miss, something that once made you feel alive." She breathed slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "I remember light, soft and warm, not the kind our stars give, but one that used to come from laughter." Her words trembled with emotion. "There was a time when my people sang, when we celebrated creation itself. But the wars, the expansions, the endless victories, they took that away." She opened her eyes. "Is this dreaming?" Elias shook his head gently. "Not yet, but it's where it begins." He didn't realize how close they were standing until her hand brushed his. He froze, unsure whether to step back or bow, but the queen didn't move. Her eyes held his, and for a heartbeat the air itself seemed to stop breathing. "Captain," she said quietly, "your world must have been beautiful." "It was," he whispered. "Still is somewhere inside us." Her voice softened even more. "Then perhaps I wish to see it. Not with my eyes, but with your dreams." Elias smiled, though a lump rose in his throat. "Then I'll share them with you." Her violet eyes shimmered. "Will you truly?" "Yes." And as the Zirin moon climbed higher, the queen finally rested her head against the window's light, her eyes closing for the first true sleep of her life. Elias watched her, a strange peace filling his chest, and when dawn came, she whispered one word before waking, a word that made him realize everything was changing. Home. The following day, the entire palace whispered of strange things. They said the queen had been seen smiling at sunrise. They said the human had not been dismissed, nor confined, but invited to walk beside her through the hall of creation, where no foreigner had ever set foot. Elias didn't understand why, but when Arleia summoned him that morning, the air around her felt different, softer, alive. She stood before a great crystalline mural, a living memory shifting with color and light. The image showed two galaxies spiraling together, their stars merging in a dance of radiant energy. "This," she said quietly, "is called the confluence. It's the oldest Zirin record we have, of the time before we lost emotion." Elias stepped closer, mesmerized. "Before you lost it?" She nodded. "Long ago we were like you, creatures of laughter, sorrow, and chaos. But emotion led to division, so our ancestors purged it, genetically and culturally. They said logic would save us." Her voice trembled faintly. "It saved us from extinction, but not from emptiness." Elias studied her face. For all her power, her command, her celestial beauty, she looked tired of perfection. "Your Majesty," he said gently, "you can't erase what makes life beautiful just because it hurts sometimes." She turned toward him. "Pain is not beautiful, Captain." "Maybe not," he said. "But healing is." The queen stared at him as though the words were a new kind of light. Her gaze softened. "When you speak, Captain, it feels as though you're showing me the color of your soul." He smiled slightly. "Then I hope it's not a dull one." For the first time she laughed, a quiet, melodic sound that filled the chamber like music. Her attendants outside froze at the echo of it, disbelieving. Their queen had laughed. Arleia caught her breath as if even she hadn't expected it. "That was strange," she whispered. "That," Elias said softly, "was human." As they walked the halls together, she began to ask questions, hundreds of them, about the oceans of Earth, about why humans wrote songs that made them cry, about why they built cathedrals for things unseen, and Elias answered each with stories, of children chasing stars, of lovers parting at stations, of rain that felt like forgiveness. Every word seemed to awaken something sleeping inside her. At one point, they paused before a balcony overlooking the city. The wind shimmered with floating lights. She leaned on the railing, her eyes distant. "Elias," she said suddenly, breaking her usual formality, "do you believe hearts can remember things the mind has forgotten?" He met her gaze. "Yes, I think sometimes the heart remembers what the soul refuses to forget." She turned toward him, a faint glimmer of emotion crossing her face. Fear, awe, maybe even hope. "Then I fear mine is beginning to remember." "Don't fear it," he said quietly. "Let it." Arleia's breath trembled. She looked away, her fingers clutching the railing. I have not felt uncertainty in centuries. Yet when I speak with you, I feel fragile. Fragile doesn't mean weak, he said. It means you still care. She looked back at him, eyes bright, almost shimmering. You make it sound like caring is a kind of strength. It is, Elias replied. The strongest kind. Their silence afterward was not uncomfortable. It was deep, charged with something unspoken, delicate, powerful. As the twin suns of Zirin set, the queen whispered almost to herself, Your presence disturbs my stillness, Captain. Elias smiled faintly. Maybe stillness was never what you needed. That night when she returned to her chambers, her reflection in the mirror startled her. Her eyes, once pale, unreadable, now gleamed faintly with emotion. And somewhere deep within, beneath centuries of discipline, Queen Arlea's heart stirred and remembered how to beat. By the time the twin suns rose again, the palace had changed, though no one could explain how. The hall seemed warmer, the air gentler, as if the great city itself breathed in new rhythm. And at the center of it all, the Queen of Zirin sat alone, staring at her trembling hands. Something inside her had begun to feel again. It started small, the echo of Elias's words, the sound of his laughter, the flicker of wonder when he described rain. But now every whisper in the palace, every memory of their talks, all of it stirred her heart like ripples breaking a still lake. When he entered the chamber, she didn't look up right away. You always come when I don't call, she said quietly. Elias smiled gently. You always seem to need me when you don't admit it. That earned a small glance from her, not sharp but searching. You speak as though you know me, Captain. I'm starting to, he replied softly. She studied him as if deciding whether that frightened or comforted her. Then she gestured toward the balcony. Walk with me. They stepped into the morning light. Clouds rolled below, painted in violet and gold. The world stretched beneath them like a living dream. For a long time they said nothing. Then the queen spoke in a low voice. Yesterday, I stood before the council. They questioned why I allow a human to remain at my side. They call it weakness. Elias met her gaze. And what do you call it? She looked away. Uncertainty. Maybe that's not weakness either, he said gently. Maybe it's the start of understanding. Her violet eyes glimmered faintly. You speak as though understanding is peace. He smiled faintly. Sometimes it's war, the one we fight inside ourselves. Her lips parted slightly, a quiet breath escaping. Then perhaps, I'm losing that war. Elias stepped closer. Or maybe you're finally winning the right one. Something in those words broke the wall she had spent centuries building. Arlea turned away sharply, gripping the edge of the balcony as though the world beneath might fall apart. Her voice trembled. Do you know what I've done, Captain? I've watched worlds burn by my command. I've silenced voices that only wanted to live free. I built an empire on obedience. Khan called it peace. Her hand clenched tighter. And now, when I speak with you, I feel their echoes again. The cries, the loss, the silence. Elias didn't answer at once. He walked closer until he stood beside her. Then maybe you're not feeling weakness, he said softly. You're feeling truth. Her head bowed, silver hair cascading around her like a curtain of light. A sound escaped her, one he'd never thought he'd hear from her kind. A sharp breath, and then a single tear. It shimmered as it fell, glowing faintly before vanishing into the air. Arlea stared at her hand, stunned. What is this? Elias' voice was barely above a whisper. It's a tear, Your Majesty. It means your heart remembered pain, and that means it's alive. Her eyes widened, both in disbelief and wonder. I cannot stop it. Don't, he said gently. Don't stop it. For a moment, the Queen of Zirin, the being who commanded 1,000 fleets, wept silently under the morning sun. No guards, no attendants, no crown, only a soul remembering what it meant to feel. When her breathing steadied, she turned toward him. You risked everything for your people even when you had no chance of victory. Why? Because sometimes, Elias said softly, even losing can save something worth keeping. Our humanity. Arlea looked at him for a long time. Her voice broke the silence like a fragile thread. And what if humanity has found a home in me? He met her gaze, his heart caught between awe and disbelief. Then maybe, he said quietly, the universe just changed. She looked away. hiding a faint smile that trembled on her lips. And as the light of Zirin Prime flooded the balcony, the queen whispered words no one had ever heard from her kind before. "Thank you, Elias, for showing me what a heart sounds like when it breaks and still chooses to beat." The storm came quietly, not from the sky but from the council chambers. For the first time in centuries, the Zirin Empire's high ministers spoke against their queen. "She grows weak," they said. "The human poisons her clarity. Emotion clouds her judgment." And behind the polished walls, whispers turned into warnings. Elias felt it the moment he entered the throne hall that morning. The air was heavier. The guards stood closer. Queen Arlea's crown, the symbol of perfect reason, lay untouched on the throne beside her. When she lifted her gaze to meet his, he saw fatigue shadowing her eyes. "They've demanded I end this," she said quietly. He frowned. "And what?" "This connection," she said, the word trembling in the air like something forbidden. "They claim you've corrupted the throne, that I no longer act as the Queen of Zirin but as a woman lost in sentiment." Elias exhaled slowly. "And what do you believe?" She was silent for a long moment. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, "I believe they may be right, and I no longer care." He stepped closer, startled. Her usual restraint was gone. There was only raw truth in her tone and a kind of defiance that was entirely new. "Arlea," he said softly, "they won't let this go quietly." "I know," she replied. "They fear what they don't understand, the same way your people feared us. The difference is I will not fear anymore." She turned toward him fully, her violet eyes blazing now not with cold command but with conviction. "I have spent my life perfecting control. Now I see control without compassion is emptiness. I cannot rule a world that has forgotten to feel." Elias's chest tightened. "Then what will you do?" Her lips trembled with both courage and dread. "Change it." Outside, the palace alarms began to sound, faint, distant, growing louder. The council had acted faster than either of them expected. Loyalists were marching toward the throne hall. The queen's guards hesitated, unsure of their allegiance. Some bowed, others aimed weapons. Arlea stood tall, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade of light. "Stand down." "The queen commands it." Her tone was steady, but her eyes flicked toward Elias. "They will not listen long. You must leave now." He shook his head. "Not without you." "Elias, no," he said, stepping forward. "You taught me that running from what matters is the true surrender. I'm not leaving you behind." The air hummed as the first wave of soldiers appeared at the far end of the hall. Arlea raised her hand and the floor itself responded, crystalline walls blooming from the ground like living shields. Her power illuminated the room, but he could see her strain. For all her might, she was not fighting the soldiers. She was fighting the empire she had built. "Your Majesty," Elias said over the rising hum, "let me help." "You already have," she whispered. "You gave me back what I lost, my heart." And then, to his shock, she stepped forward and touched his chest. The energy between them flared, light so bright it painted the air in gold and violet. A vision rippled through the room. Memories of humanity's laughter, Earth's oceans, the sound of children, the sight of dawn. She was projecting them into the minds of every Zirin in the capital, forcing them to feel. Guards froze mid-strike. Ministers gasped. Across the empire, the people felt emotions they had long forgotten: awe, sorrow, hope, and love. When the light faded, the queen staggered. Elias caught her before she fell. She smiled weakly, her voice trembling. "Now they know what it means to be alive." Elias held her close, his pulse echoing hers. "You've just rewritten the heart of an empire." Her eyes fluttered open, soft, luminous, human in all but name. "Then maybe," she whispered, "it's time humanity came home to the stars." Outside, the alarm silenced. The Zirin world stood still, stunned, their hearts awakening as the queen's tearful light faded into dawn. And in that fragile, endless moment, Captain Elias realized that the war between their worlds had truly ended, not with surrender, but with understanding. The morning after the uprising, Zirin Prime was silent. Not the cold mechanical silence of obedience, but the soft quiet that follows a storm. A world awakening to emotion for the first time in centuries. From the highest balcony, the queen stood with Elias, watching the twin suns rise over her reborn empire. The light glinted across towers that shimmered with color now. Real color, born of feeling, not code. "Do you hear it?" she asked softly. Elias tilted his head. "Hear what?" "The hearts," she whispered. "My people's hearts, they beat." "I can feel them," he smiled faintly. "Then it's done. You've changed everything." Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where the remnants of her once proud fleet hung motionless above the atmosphere, their commanders waiting, uncertain, lost between the old order and the new truth. "I did not change it alone," she said. "You gave me the strength to remember who I was before I became queen." Elias looked at her for a long moment. "And who was that?" Her eyes softened. A soul that once wanted to see beauty, not command it. She turned toward him, her silver hair catching the light. "And you, Elias, Ward of Earth? What will you do now that the war is over?" He chuckled quietly. "I haven't thought that far. Maybe I'll go home, if home still remembers me." A faint sadness crossed her expression. "You speak as though you are no longer part of it." "Maybe I'm not," he said honestly. "The man who left Earth died a long time ago. The one standing here, he found something else among the stars." She looked down at her hands, hands that had once commanded fleets. "Then perhaps," she murmured, "the stars gave us both back what we'd lost." The wind brushed past them, gentle, carrying the scent of new life blooming in the gardens below. For a while they simply stood together in silence. No titles, no empire. Just two hearts learning how to exist in peace. Then Arleia turned to him, her tone quiet, uncertain. "Elias, may I ask something? Not as a queen, but as Arleia?" He nodded. "Of course. When you humans love someone," she began slowly. "How do you know?" Elias paused. Her voice held no royal command now, only honesty, fragile and trembling. "You just do," he said. "When you look at them and realize the universe feels smaller without them in it." Her breath caught, and for a long heartbeat she said nothing. Then she took a small step forward, the faintest smile touching her lips. "Then I fear the universe has become very small for me." The words hung between them like the edge of a sunrise. Elias swallowed, his voice low. "Arleia." She raised a hand, not to silence him, but to steady herself. "You gave me my heart back, Elias. You taught me to dream. And now I find that my first dream is you." He exhaled slowly, the moment heavy, sacred. "Then, Your Majesty," she interrupted softly. "Arleia." He smiled. "Arleia. What happens now?" She looked at him, the light of two suns reflected in her violet eyes. "Now," she whispered, "we begin again. Not as conqueror and captive, but as two who dared to understand." Elias took her hand, warm, steady, alive. "Then let me ask one more thing," he said quietly. She tilted her head. "Ask." He hesitated, a small nervous smile crossing his face. "Was it a proposal? When I said I'd stay?" For a heartbeat, Arleia just stared, startled yet moved beyond words. Then softly, she laughed. That same fragile, beautiful sound that once echoed through the hall of crystal. Her hand tightened around his, her eyes glistening. "Perhaps it was," she said gently. He smiled, half in disbelief. "And what did you say to that, Your Majesty?" She stepped closer until the air between them shimmered like starlight, and with a smile that held the warmth of two worlds reborn, she whispered, "Yes, I do." The universe held its breath. Above them, the twin suns rose higher, their light spilling across the balcony. Not on a throne, not on a crown, but on two souls who had taught each other that love itself was humanity's greatest victory. And somewhere beyond the sky, a new era began, not for humans, not for Zirans, but for both.